who is being talked about in not only Devy circles but college fantasy circles as well. And then they still have Kavasier Smoke, who is an up and comer on the rise, and this is his year, to really make a name for himself and play some good football. And with a name like Kavasier Smoke, if you're doing good, if you're having a good season, that name is going to stick out because that is a cool name, Kavasier Smoke. So they got a really good 1-2 punch. They have a wide receiver named Josh Ali for the quarterbacks to lean on. He's going to give some stability to the wide receiving group. If you look at the defense, should be solid. Even though they did lose Jamin Davis and Kelvin Joseph, they still got some pieces and some depth coming back in there to where their defense should be good and help at least keep them in games. And Kentucky could be a team that's 500 or better, and really having another good, solid season. If one of these quarterbacks pops for them, they could really take off, and they could really rival. I mean, they could beat Tennessee, they could beat Vandy, and they could have a really solid season. Moving on to Missouri, 5-5 last year, and normally I'm all about the running back position, and I love the running backs. And I want to see who's playing running back for this team. But they got a good quarterback in Bazelak. Okay, he's going to be just fine for them. I think his name's Carmen Bazelak. I can't remember his first name. They have 3 wide receivers I want to talk about. 2 big targets: Kiki Chisholm, 6'4", and Tavoski Dove, 6'3". 2 big guys for the quarterback to throw the ball to. Now there's another guy here transferred from Ohio State, Mookie Cooper. Transfers in. I'm pretty sure there's no waiting period. I think the NCAA waived that because of COVID or whatever, so he's immediately ineligible. So if Ohio State brought this kid in, okay, and what happened with Cooper, this is easy. He looked at the depth chart at Ohio State and said, holy crap, I'm not going to play till I'm a junior. I'm out. I'm going to transfer to Mizzou. So he did. And he's going to make his way to the field, because like I said, if Ohio State recruits you, you're probably pretty darn good wide receiver, and you're probably going to see the field. So all that, and then you add the running back, Tyler Batty, who is really good, and he brings a load, and he runs hard and physical. I don't think he's the fastest guy I've ever seen, but he runs good and physical, and that's a pretty decent offense there in Missouri. So now all of a sudden, you're looking at these teams, these last 2 or 3 teams that I've talked about, all could rival to go and play in that SEC championship. But what do they have to do? Well, they have to beat the bigger guns, the two bullies of the East Division, if you will, Georgia and Florida. Now, Georgia, 8-2, and it's Georgia we're talking about, okay? Like, these guys are good all the time. Year after year, you're thinking it's Georgia, it's Florida, and they're going to be the ones fighting and duking it out for the right to go play in the SEC championship. Now, if you haven't paid attention to college football over the past couple of seasons, I'm going to let you in on a little bit of secret here. I'm going to let you in. Lean in close and listen. We'll let you in on a little secret. Georgia is good. And they're good top to bottom. They're good from the coaching staff to the janitor. They're good. Their O-line is fantastic. Maybe the best O-line, I don't know, Alabama. Maybe the second best offensive line in the SEC and maybe even in college. JT Daniels, quarterback, he had a full season, and he's got a couple of studs at the running back position. Zamir White and James Cook, brother of Dalvin Cook. This could finally be his year that he breaks out. And then they got running back stocked on the shelf, waiting to come in. They did lose Pickens with an ACL tear. The highly touted, very, very sought after wide receiver. They got Eric Gilbert. He can make up for that coming in as a transfer from LSU. The defense, it's Kirby Smart we're talking about, where we're looking at, it's just Georgia. Georgia is, it's another guy who was under Saban, and this team looks a lot like that. And you give Georgia a couple more seasons, and they're going to be up there with Bama. They may even overtake Bama if Saban ever decides to get out. So what am I getting at? I'm getting at the fact that Georgia is going to be, in my opinion, the team in the East to contend with. And I know I haven't forgot about Florida yet. They're 8-4 last season, but they are replacing a lot of pieces. Okay, I'm going to start with their defense first, and then I'll talk a little bit about the offense. The defense should be a little bit back to form, because when usually over the past 5 or 6 years, you think Florida, you think their defense is fantastic, their offense is going to score 13 points, and they're still going to win games because their defense is going to keep the other team from scoring 10. That should be, Florida's defense should be a lot better than it has been. They have 3 fantastic linebackers to set the tone for the offense, who has lost Kyle Trask, who has now Emory Jones, who is definitely a bigger running threat at the quarterback position. It's his time now to step up and be the guy. They still have Dameon Pierce, who is a downhill, rolling rock of a runner. He runs, he hits you, and he punishes you. And he is a very physical running back. And that's not something you normally see from Florida. Normally you see the guys that are shifty and fast and can wiggle. And, it's this guy is, he's a load when he goes to hit you, and he is hard to bring down. Wide receiver position. Exit Kadarius Toney. The guy I want to talk about is Justin Shorter, a guy who transferred from Penn State a couple of years ago and is now primed to be his time, okay? Emory Jones, Justin Shorter, you got Dameon Pierce. They also have another running back whose name escapes me right now, who's going to definitely see time. The Florida offense is going to be different because they lost Kyle Pitts as well, but it's still going to have pieces, and you have to be scared of it, because as Emory Jones gains confidence and gains experience on the football field, this Florida team, I promise you, and I hate Florida, don't get me wrong, I hate Florida just about as much as a person can, but this team will be better at the end of the season than they were when they started. They're going to get better every week, and by the time the midseason rolls around to the last quarter of the season, Florida will be a threat. And that is the SEC East. We move on to what you would call probably the upper division. The West has, some big guns in it, and it's like they're going to eat themselves. There's going to be a lot of teams, and we know Bama's at the top, okay? And I'm going to get to them dead last because we know they're the premier team in college football, so they're definitely the premier team in the conference. So we'll get there, I promise. We're going to start with Arkansas, and this team is built on a couple of things. I'll talk about their superstar wide receiver in just a minute, but if there's one thing I talk about, and I've already mentioned it in this podcast, what does a team need to succeed? They need a good offensive line and a good running game. Well, this team has, I believe, their entire offensive line returning. All starters from last year are coming back, and 9 starters return on defense. That is fantastic. Okay? KJ Jefferson is the quarterback, and he has the new hotness in college fantasy at the wide receiver position to throw the ball to in Treylon Burks. Treylon Burks is like 6'4", 215 or something. He is fantastic. He's rising up draft boards in college fantasy. He's rising up draft boards in Devy leagues. and he is being talked about as top 2 or 3 wide receiver in the country as far as Devy and college fantasy goes. If you put on some tape from this guy, it does not take long for you to say, man, this kid is awesome. Now, is he too big to play in the NFL at the wide receiver position? I don't know. To be determined. I've heard some grumbles about that, but, they're going to get him the ball, and he is going to put up some big-time numbers this year as long as he can stay healthy. And Arkansas could easily improve on a 3-7 record that they had last year with just the experience. Treylon Burks there, and, be interesting to see at the end of the year just what he does with all this hype and all this, carry on playing for Arkansas, which is, a step ahead of Vandy in the conference. He's like the diamond on that team, and if teams can figure out a way to take him out of the equation, Arkansas may struggle again. And if they can take him out of the equation, he doesn't put up big numbers. It'll be interesting to see how that equates, at the end of the season. Mississippi State 4-7 last year. Mike Leake and his air raid offense. If you look back at what Mike Leake has done, in the past with this air raid, his quarterbacks put up astronomically unbelievable college football numbers. I won a college championship with a quarterback that he had 2 years ago at Washington State because he threw for 600 yards a game. That is just hard to deal with as a defensive team. But if you can get into the quarterback and he can't put up those yards, then Mississippi State may struggle. So what's that mean? Well, that means Will Rogers, the quarterback, is a name to put on your list as a potential college fantasy guy who could really light up the stat sheets and win you some college fantasy games. I'm not sure how it equates to the NFL yet. Okay, Gardner Minshew had a fantastic Washington State career. And then the guy that came in after him the 1 year, Anthony something, his name's escaping me too. Fantastic college numbers. Didn't equate to the NFL, i.e. Trevor Lawrence bouncing Gardner Minshew, and that was it. But keep an eye on Will Rogers, the quarterback at Mississippi State, and what he's doing for your fantasy teams in college, and see if it's worth picking him up and playing him. Because if he comes out and he's throwing the lights out, he's going to go win you some college games. At wide receiver, that means that Jaden Walley and even Jacavius Marks out of the backfield could benefit from this air raid offense. What did I say about defense before? If Mike Leake could get a decent defense, then he can throw all over the place like he wants to. And the defense should be solid and competitive, and they have good starting cornerbacks to anchor that secondary. So his air raid, it may take a year or two to transfer into the big-name college. Is he going to have that big a leash? I don't know. Time will tell. But he's had success with it at other schools, and we'll see how he does with it at Mississippi State with now a full season of college on the horizon. Ole Miss, 5-5 last year. They got Lane Kiffin as a head coach, of course. I'll talk about one guy on this team, and it's a guy who I really wish I would have got in on the ground floor last year and took a shot on him, because we really didn't know what the quarterback situation was going to be at Ole Miss. They didn't start playing till late because of the coronavirus, and the quarterback situation was kind of up in the air. And John Rice Plumlee, they're thinking about moving him to a different position because Matt Corral has taken over at the quarterback position. I'm gonna throw a number at you. I know I said I'm not doing numbers, but this number just screams talk about me. 384.3 yards a game last year for Matt Corral. That is some good number. That's an average, people. That's an average. And that is really good, and that's what he's going to build on. Now, he did lose a huge piece with Elijah Moore going to the NFL. Elijah Moore